What's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and that gentleman next to me is not Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting. That's Max Louis.
Hi.
And welcome to Indie Game Business. Max, today we're talking with Max how to be successful in services for games. There's a lot to talk about with that. So, Max,
Yeah,
how you doing?
very good. Thank you so much for having me. It is
Excellent.
a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. What time is it over there, wherever you're at?
Ooh, you know what? I don't know. It is 5 p.m. I have myself a little beer.
He said
Make
it's beer
sure
time.
it is beer time. I've
It's
gone for
beer
a nice
time.
stout. Apparently, it's like a chocolate pudding stout. So I've gone special, but it'll
So
be
it's
fun.
beer and dessert.
Yeah, right? Why not?
That's awesome. Okay. All right, Max. So first question that Jay always likes to start with.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about you and how you got into the game industry and what happened there.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been in the games industry for about 7 years. I basically shimmied my way in. Like many people do, I suppose. It's a hard one to get into, but I started MLC in 2017, and essentially I was freelancing doing like graphic design and videos and stuff like that. And I wanted to do art and audio and all these other amazing things that I couldn't personally do myself. And so I decided that I'd find amazing people out there, amazing artists, and I started on Discord. Started pulling them together, built a bit of a team up, and then I guess over the years it went from being just kind of like a Discord side hustle to a company, which is very cool. And it wasn't until post COVID I actually started going to events because of the timing of things. And I feel like when you go to events and you start meeting everyone that are part of the industry, that's when you can really say that you're that's one way that you can say that you're in the industry, right? So that's kind of like the moment I felt like for me where I made it in.
All right. So what kind of tell us about MLC and what kind of services you offer?
Yeah, sure. So we wanted to do things a little bit differently. There are lots of outsourcing studios out there, loads of outsourcing studios, and anyone who is an outsourcing studio provider or a service provider knows the problem with that. So we tried it a bit differently. So we created a network of independent contractors, and we kept it that way. So when you're hiring MLC, it's all about hiring contractors, freelancers from around the world, and it's sort of a replacement of doing that yourself on places like Reddit or going to events and meeting freelancers, because it kind of brings the stability and security of an outsourcing studio, but still the passion and desire to do such a great job from the freelancers themselves. So we're kind of bringing two models here together, but we're doing, we're an art focused studio. So we do art animation, 3D, both 2D and 3D, concepting, but we also do marketing materials like key art and trailers and stuff like that. And then we have introduced engineering in January. So we're working on a couple of projects at the moment as well on that front, which is awesome. So full co-development now, which is great.
So it continues to evolve, right? Do you
Yeah.
find that that people reach out more and more for different things that you are not currently hiring out, or
We do get, I mean, we do get odd requests. Yeah, like we've had theme park rides. When we started the business, it wasn't actually games focused. I wanted to be in games, but we were kind of doing things like restaurants and just local businesses. But yeah, over the years we've had like theme parks. We've had a whole bunch of interesting not safe for work projects come up, and then obviously the explosion of NFTs, Web3, that brought all sorts of funky stuff. Nowadays, though, I think people have started to know what we're good at and what we do. So I guess, yeah, requests have got a little bit more like normal, if you like. But no, it's nice to have variety. I mean, last year we worked on 126 projects. So the point of MLC is to be indie to AA focused. So work on lots of different projects, build lots of teams of amazing people. And then we have our producers who work across those, and our art directors, QA people, lead artists, supervisors. All that kind of framework is in there as well, which is awesome.
the different projects? 126 Can you talk
Yeah.
about any of the projects you worked on?
Yeah, sure. So last year released was Lord of the Rings: Return to Moria. Did that with Free Range Games. Worked on some of the hair that you see on the dwarf characters, which was awesome. We worked a little bit with Outplay Entertainment on something. We're currently working on games with Well, they're published by Raw Fury, Gameforge, and Daedalic. So look out for those. They're awesome projects, and I'm being so careful. It's such a bumpy thing to talk about. There are so many, but I just don't know. But there's also lots of like solo developers who come to us who potentially have never done this before, or maybe have got like 10 years of software engineering experience and made a little bit of money and now want to invest into building their dream game. So loads of projects that you'd never heard of. I mean, one of them was Labyrinthine, a great client, great friend. Those guys they started their studio from humble beginnings, and then it launched in early access. The community built up, and then by the time they released, they won the Steam last year. They won Steam VR Game of the Year, which is amazing. So yeah, it's nice to be a part of that journey with indies, and that's why I love it.
That's awesome. So how many people do you have in your, what do you call it, a studio or
Yeah, we call it studio. Yeah, or a network.
network?
Network can be misleading. I guess it depends, but yeah, it does fluctuate because obviously we're contractor based. But we have about 10 full-time staff, and then full-time sort of employees, and then we probably have about 45 to 60 people working on stuff right now, and then there's a network of 150. So we have like a core studio and then a kind of extended network that we can call on if we have like capacity issues or whatever, or like there's really specific skill sets that we might not need all the time. And so like a lot of every studio should have like an extended network like that. So that's our one. So yeah, I'd say about 65 to 150. It kind of ranges.
Wow. So do you bring on industry veterans, or do you bring on people right out of school, or just people that have good portfolios?
Yeah, this is always the big one, right? Like everyone wants to hire the junior end of the spectrum, but it's tricky. So I mean, for us, we have a few like sort of principal artists, but I'd say the most abundant part of our network will be in the sort of, I'd say, high junior, sort of mid end, all the way to like full seniors. The junior end of the spectrum, we have hired a bunch of juniors before, and we've had interns as well, and all of them have been like a great success. And I love hiring people in that part of their career because they just offer so much passion, so much enthusiasm. They really listen. They want to learn, which is great from a client's perspective who's giving this feedback. But they learn quickly. When you're at the beginning of your career, you're often learning things very fast. And the more you learn, the more experience you get. Learning does become, it's always every day, but learning does become slower because you know a lot. So yeah, I do love hiring juniors, but we don't do it that often. It just requires more support capability from us. And we want to be like the best place to work for artists. And if we can't provide proper support for our network and our studio, then it doesn't work. So we need to make sure that we're there for those guys, and that's why we decide, like, we limit who we can hire, basically.
Wow. That's really cool. So you guys have a Discord, and is that how you do everything through your Discord, or you do it through
Slack?
We
still do it on Discord. Yeah, Discord. No, fuck Slack. Yeah, no, not we contemplating going to Slack, but artists are found on Discord, and so are our clients. So we decided to keep it there. We are working on a platform at the moment that might bridge the gap between like maybe move us away from Discord. We can talk about that later if you like, but it's it's definitely been a great place for us. The only thing with Discord is like there are, I guess, some question marks over data. Unfortunately, that's kind of like the internet, right? So unless you're on maybe Teams, but nobody really wants to be on Teams either.
Teams, what's that?
Right.
I think everyone forgot even that word existed after Discord came out.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
After Discord came out, and I mean, and really, what's with the name Discord? I mean, Discord means confusion, right? So
there was another name they had. It comes up. When you open Discord, it comes up with a little message. It says on there that they were going to call it something else. I wish I knew what it was.
But Discord, I mean, that just means confusion. So that's just a confusing name to have when the whole point is to not be confused.
I know. I love the brand of Discord though. Like, you know those videos they used to. I don't know if they still create them, like the update videos. There was that guy who used to voice over them, and they were just spot on. Like, such a great brand.
It is a good brand. All right, so let's see some of the questions we got up here. What is it? What it means to be successful in service for games?
Yeah. I mean, I gave you this question, and then I immediately regretted it because it's a big and difficult question. Well, there are some. I mean, one of the things we were talking about before this actually was, which I found interesting, was to be successful in the games industry. I think you have to, especially if you're a founder, you have to separate your success criteria for your business and your company from your own. I think they have to be two different things, and you need to make sure that your success criteria is delivering for your company and vice versa. Otherwise, there's a disconnect. So I think to be successful in services for games, it's no different. You need to find what it is that you want to achieve and then make your own success out of that. I don't believe that there's any particular criteria that makes you successful. But from a business perspective, of course, success is kind of monitored and metered by cash and how much money you're making, or maybe how many projects you're working on. For me, it's always kind of been how many people can I impact in a positive way, and I mean that genuinely. I just find that really interesting. How many different games can we work on, and can we work on some really cool titles that maybe people who are not in the games industry have heard of and they're playing. Like my girlfriend, she has a cousin who's 12 years old, and I'd love for him, without me telling him, I'd love for him to work on some of the games that play some of the games that we've worked on. So yeah, for me, that's my success criteria, and I think it's important to identify success criteria outside of money, because the money part, although you can have an influence on it, of course, we've seen in the past year that it's out of everyone's control. If there are investors who are funding the projects that you're working on, and those investors who you've never spoken to pull out, then your cash flow is affected. So there's no way you can have control over what the investors do if you've never even spoken to them. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers that, but it's a way.
It's a way. No, I get what you're saying, and it's actually what you do is really good for people that work with you, because as an artist in the games industry or anything in the games industry, even if you got a brand new spanking job, you're always looking for the next thing, because
Right.
it's a game industry. You know that unless you are working on a game that has a very long tail, and that you're higher up in that organization, you need to know what you got to do next. And like your employees, you do all that. You do all the legwork for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's a big part. We've obviously asked like artists and engineers, why do you stay at MLC? What's the big thing? Part of it is definitely the fact that, I mean, if you're a freelancer, life's pretty lonely for starters, because you're kind of talking to a client and then yourself. And if you get stuck, you have to tell the client you got stuck, and then you have to try and solve it with them, which, depending on who your client is, that could be pretty scary or just impossible. So, and also in between all of this, unless you're, been in this industry for a long time, you're always chasing work. And I actually probably think that no matter who you are, you're probably always somewhat chasing work, unless you're maybe an elite name. I mean, all our service providers, no matter who we are always chasing work. Even Keywords is always chasing work. It's part of it. So freelancers don't want to do that. They want to make pretty cool pictures and other things. So,
right.
If we take care of that marketing side, and we take care of that community peer review support aspect of it, then everyone on our team takes care of our clients. And that's like our mutual agreement, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's all, because that's what it is. The game industry is, you're always, like I said, even if you just got a new job, you're what's next? What's after that? Because this is going to stop at some point in time, and you don't know exactly when. Sometimes it's like, oh, you're done, or sometimes they say in a month you're done, or sometimes it just ends. You just don't know. Yeah. So okay, let's see. You're talking about how everyone can that. If you're just a freelancer and you try and go to your client to solve something, then with your at the studio, you have other people to go to, right? So can you
Yeah,
talk a
right.
little bit about your culture there?
Yeah, absolutely, man. The culture's a big one. I mean, it's when we started I guess there were a lot of questions about remote culture being a real thing, and I think now everyone has realized that that is a thing. But um, creating a remote culture it's not even it's not even difficult. You just have to care about people. I think I saw something about this with Richard Branson once, of all people, he was saying like, how do you get people to stay at Virgin? And it was like there's no magic formula or magic bullet or something. It's literally just care about your people, and then you will and hire appropriately as well. I think one of the big things I've always said about culture is it's not necessarily what you do when people are in your company. It's who you hire in the first place, because you can't force somebody to be somebody they are not. Like if somebody is data driven, results focused, doesn't really insensitive, and doesn't really have emotion in the normal way, let's say, or they're not sensitive to emotion. Um, those kind of people are awesome. They're amazing. But if you have a company full of those, and then you try and create a culture that's a bit wishy-washy and focused on, you know, empathy and all these sort of things, that you might find that there's a lot of friction and you're forcing culture on people, and it just doesn't work. What's much better is that you hire people based on the culture and values that you see are most important for your success in your company, and then you keep doing that. Um, I don't know how that translates to a company with thousands of employees, but certainly in the hundreds, that works really well. And that's something that we've always focused on. So one of our, I guess, uh, things, this great word, one of our things is there are like, hundreds of thousands of artists, let's say, out there. And there are many amazing, really, really excellent portfolios. But and I don't think anyone should ever be hired on their portfolio. You've got the portfolio, great. Now get them in the interview and talk about them as a person. See if you can hang out with them for 8 hours a day, and that they'll work with you. And look for their remote culture fit as well. Not everyone is suitable for remote work. So there's a lot of like little things that you need to look for in a person, and soft skills and culture points when you're hiring. And I think when you do that, and you bring in people who share common values, a culture naturally happens, because culture is always something that happens between people and communities. It's not a forced thing.
So in the interview process, it's more like this dude's got or this person has an awesome portfolio, but do I like them?
Yeah,
Could
exactly.
I spend time with them every day?
Yeah,
Are we
and they
going to
don't
be
have to
able
be
to
your
deal
friends.
with each other?
Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
they never hire people based on the fact could you be friends with them. That's not really that's too simple. It's
Uh,
about working with people. Yeah, and then I think it all falls into place, and you find your culture. You don't like set it. You like find that thing.
mhm.
It's nice.
So the next part of that is nurturing that culture. So what kind of
Right.
things do you do to nurture that culture? Do you have like internal get-togethers and like Friday night, you know,
Yeah.
whatever party time or on Discord or play games with each other?
Yeah. It's nurturing the culture is easy when you have a certain amount of work. We've had times, as all service providers, we've had times where we're really busy and nobody's got time to do anything, and then we have times where we're just like completely empty, and everyone has all the time in the world, but nobody's really focused on what we're doing, because we're contractors and they're not exclusive. They're working with other clients or whatever. So in the times where we're like stupid busy, it's really hard to get people to go to the game nights and pizza nights and whatever else you might want to run. And when you're really empty, it's really hard to get people to commit their time to something that isn't necessarily delivering back for them. So, but when you're in the sweet spot, when you're in that middle bit where you've got work, people are engaged, but they have a little bit of time, they're not stressed out, and they have a little bit of time to focus on, you know, being around friends, then we could create really, really cool culture. And it's for us at the moment, we're kind of in that range, which is really nice. And yeah, we do the game nights and pizza, Christmas parties. We do actually get people together in person as well. We did it twice. We didn't do it last year because it felt irresponsible considering how shit the year was. But in 2022 we had this like big. Oh man, I wish I could show you. We had this big MLC Union is what we called it, and it was like we rented out this house on Airbnb from in Devon in the UK, and I think we had like 25, 30 people come from like Argentina, Canada, loads from Spain, France, you know, all
Wow.
sorts of places. Yeah, and we just had a blast, right? It was like 4 days, 3 days, something like that, and we got the chance to really hang out in person, and you know what? That made such a difference. Like the weeks afterwards, watching those people work together, it does make, like, I'm a big fan of a hybrid. You know, remote doesn't do it all, but neither does being in the office. You want a little bit of both, and that's how we hybrid it. We get people to go to events together, or we get them to all together in a great offsite, but that's expensive. So
Well,
sometimes.
I'm pretty sure Jay is watching this right now. So Jay,
Ah,
20% Airbnb in North Carolina. That would be
yes,
awesome. Yes.
they do it. Otherwise, your team are leaving you, huh?
That's right. That's right. Okay. So you were talking, you said that last year sucked. So
They did.
how did MLC cope with that?
Yeah, we actually had it quite early. I say that as an assumption because a lot of people seem to face the issue of the industry back end of last year, and I think the front end of last year was probably where all these companies were feeling a bit of the pressure starting. The back end is where the result of that pressure started materializing. Um, for us, we're a smaller business, so that materializes quicker, perhaps. I don't know. So for us, yeah, I think like February last year, I was super stressed. It was difficult to see where everything was going. You know, we had such an explosive year in 2022. We grew 165% in one year, and we hired. You know, we had all these sort of we did a couple of like Web3 trailers as well, and that kind of added a new revenue stream to the business that we knew wasn't necessarily reliable. But we used those funds that we made from that to hire people, bring them into the games industry, and try and create a new base of clients in the games industry rather than Web3 industry in 2023. Unfortunately, the industry then faced the issues that it did, and we did have too many staff, so we had to let go of a couple of contractors. And I do mean like a couple. We tried really, really hard to do everything we could to keep everyone. And then in the end, we had to reduce some salaries for a month or two, the back end of last year. And that was in an effort to maintain jobs. So it was like a voluntary, was it voluntary? I think so. There was but we basically, we worked with the team to figure out how are we going to survive this, because when all your projects just disappear. Access Studio, for example, in Glasgow, is it Glasgow in Scotland, has just shut down from a lack of projects. You know, this is a successful 20 plus year business that has never had that kind of problem, and now it's gone into administration. And it's purely like, if you've got people you're paying, and you're paying them based on the projects you've got, and maybe you've got some reserve funds, burn those reserve funds, and then what have you got left? You have no choice left. And that was kind of where we were sat. And then I guess it all changed. You know, we worked really hard on our business development last year. It was tough. Deals weren't really signing. It's kind of still like that now, but it's a little bit different. We could get into that. But yeah, back end of last year, we started seeing things start to sign. And January, people were starting to sign on the dotted line, which was great. And then by March, we had our best month ever. Which was awesome. So and we just hired somebody new, so
Awesome.
we're on the up, which is which is great.
So did you obviously learned some lessons for that. So how are you prepared for something like that happens again?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned before that I started this business like 7 years ago, and
Mhm.
when I started it, I think I was 18, so I had a lot to learn in those 7 years, and now, right, I'm 26 now, so the biggest thing that I'd learned from last year was, don't ever assume that don't ever hire people lightly. You know, everyone we hired were fantastic people. But it's a question of who would have been most useful for the business, and what roles would have been most useful for the business at the time. And I think we kind of were like, oh, it'd be nice to have this person. It'd be cool to have that. Maybe we can grow here or there. And we did strategize it. I'm kind of simplifying it a bit, but yeah, ultimately, it's just like you need to be really, really careful when you're hiring. Do loads of interviews, and just work really hard on, is it really worth it? Because you don't want to let those people go. There's no point hiring somebody and then letting them go. That's worse for everyone. So you have to be really, really careful when you hire. And unfortunately, this advice is probably what's circling around between all of the founders at the moment, and is also the reason why there are less jobs on the market. So it's annoying. It doesn't necessarily, when you spread that advice industry wide, it doesn't actually serve the industry very well. It might serve you individually as a business, but not necessarily the industry, which sucks, because you want to serve the industry you're in, because you're in that industry, you get the return back if you do well in the industry. But sometimes you end up maybe hurting it as a business, which is a bit odd.
Right. I mean, there's pros and cons to a lot of different things, that
Always.
you're doing, right? And sometimes you have to do something and it saves the whole, but other people get removed out of that.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's got to be tough.
Yeah. And I've spoken to a lot of service providers, and it was kind of across the board. Everyone was struggling quite a lot, with a reduction of projects, and including this year as well. It hasn't been free sailing for everyone. I actually found that January, February, March. I remember speaking to a guy called Sam Carlisle, who's used to be a external development at Xbox and very well known in the external development community. Great guy. And we were chatting, and I said to him, things are going well in the first quarter of this year. And he's like, that's funny. It's not going well for lots of people in the service provider space. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that's because we built on contractors and other people built on employees. Because, like, fundamentally, a service provider is useful to, let's say, a AAA studio because they are flexible. That's one of the biggest things. So if you're designed to be a flexible solution, a studio could bolt on to their existing employee base, then why is your base of people employees? Like, if you're supposed to be ultra flexible, shouldn't you be contractors? So, and that's a very simple way of saying it. And I could see a lot of value in having employees. Like, you could put them on other projects, you can still be flexible in other ways, sure. But when all the projects start slowing down, you suddenly got like hundreds of staff that you need to lay off as a service provider. And it's just awful. It's so much better having work spread between contractors. And maybe it's not, 40 hours a week. Maybe it's 20 hours a week on 100 contractors. And instead of having 50 contractors, you're actually giving work to 100 people. And then, if work dries up a little bit, you have the ability to flex, but nobody is relying on you on their own. So they have other projects. So in their own right, our contractors themselves are very flexible. So everything we do is about flexibility. And I think that's why this year we found our feet faster than other studios, because we built on the premise that we need to, service that need, basically.
And it's also just like the perception of it, right? As an employee, you don't expect your hours to go up and down. But as a contractor, it's just expected that it's going to be this way. And then, you'll be working on it. Even it could be week to week, there may be 40 hours one week and then 20 hours another week. And then you might get a week off, and that's just accepted. But it's just a much more accepted.
And I would say it's not just accepted, it's chosen. People who go to freelance choose the life. It's a life. It's almost like its own lifestyle business. If you're going to be freelance and you're just going to be, 50 hours a week constantly, I mean, sure, maybe you're making bank, but is that really like the life you wanted as a freelancer? I feel like a lot of the people that we work with, the freelancers we work with, they love the flexibility they have in their own lives, the control they have over their hours. And although nobody wants to have a week off, in reality, if I'm 40 hours back to 45 maybe hours back to back for a month, and then I have like 3 or 4 days where I'm not really doing much, but I build knowing that, because you remember they're billing for this. You know, a
Yeah.
contract is like 35 bucks an hour. An employee might be like 25 bucks an hour. So you're
Mhm.
billing for time off, and then you get all that time off. It's great as long as it balances out and works that way. It is great, and I think that's what freelancers choose actually.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been over the past 12 years mostly a contractor. There was a
Yep.
little stint where I did have I was an employee for about a year and a half, but I still was a contractor on other things. All right, so we have a good question. We got a couple good questions, and anybody else, if you got some questions, hit us with it, and we'll bring it up on the screen, and we'll ask Max. We'll ask Max. So, independent game dev. I saw that you had posted something earlier in the chat. You had said, "Sorry about the confusing name of mine for this server, but you can't change. Why would you want to change your name from independent game dev?
What's confusing?
That's awesome. That's everybody would want that name on Twitch. Twitch.tv/independent game dev. I'm going to say that's an awesome name. And I'm going to say that you should keep it, especially if you're going to continue, because that's just an awesome name. But here's a question from them. It sounds like you must have a thorough interview process. How long is the average interview cycle for a candidate applying with you?
That's a good point. No. I guess the answer is no. We don't have a really thorough interview process. I'm not a big fan of. I don't think many people on the interviewee side are big fans of like 8 interviews or whatever. You know, having like interview after interview. And I get it. You know, lots of people have to make a choice on who you're hiring. And I said, be careful with who you're hiring. Sure. From a contractor's perspective, our interview process is well, let's call it our vetting process. Our vetting process is to first we send their portfolio, usually outstation, to lead artists and supervisors at the MLC team, see what their opinions are. If it's piqued their interest, we will then book a screening call. And the screening call is to just talk about the opportunity of MLC for the artist or whoever, and see if it resonates. Check what the freelancer's looking for. Some freelancers do want absolute chock-a-block full-time work. Other freelancers kind of want a little bit here and there. And some people on ArtStation have full-time jobs anyway and might want a bit of on the side. So we need to identify, are we going to provide to the artist what we know we can, and likewise. So the screening call was the first step. Second step is then there is sometimes an interview where you'll talk to lead artists in the team as well as like a hiring manager. But then when you're through that, if you're on the junior end, then maybe there'll be a skills test. It's not a paid skills test because we hire lots and lots of people. And it is totally optional, and the work can go on your portfolio. It's all yours. We do a lot of paid skill tests, but that one isn't. If you're not the junior end of the spectrum, then we basically put you in either studio or network. And if you're in studio, you go into trials, which basically is a 2 to 3 month process of working on client projects with the rest of the MLC team on a slightly guarded end of the MLC team, where you are talking to the client, you are joining the team meetings, but you're close to a supervisor who can keep an eye on how things are going, make sure that you've got like the right customer service and stuff like that. And then at the end of the 2-3 months period, we say, how have you found working at MLC? You're paid for the whole thing, obviously. How have you found working at MLC? Is it something you want to continue doing, or is it something you want to do on the side, or not at all? And depending on the answer, we'll put them into studio, network, or just cease working together. But usually anyone who's in studio trial, if they've got work from us, they go into studio because we create good relationships.
Well, that might not be a super thorough interview process, but it's a very thorough onboarding process.
True. Yes.
That's so onboarding versus interviewing. It's like, hey, interviewing, am I going to be able to work with this person? Are they good? And can we like each other? And then the onboarding. And that's awesome, with also some training, right? Like you said, customer service and that's smart.
I mean, that's the thing, right? We said about there's literally thousands of portfolios out there that are amazing, but it's about finding the artists who have all these other skills that they can't put on their portfolio. And also, portfolios are so annoying because I know probably hundreds of artists where their portfolio says one thing but their skills are another. and that can go either way. Like maybe their portfolio is amazing, but their skills aren't really there for projects. But usually it's the other way, where their portfolios are decent, but really their skills are amazing. But there's so much NDA work they can't share. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they've never really had the paid opportunities to do so, and they never had the time to do it themselves. And like when you find an artist, like great example of this, Ben in our team. Ben we hired to do modeling for a project. We needed him on a project for modeling, and he has now become our top Unreal wizard. Like he is a problem solver through and through with Unreal, and he does like VFX, blueprinting, just solving weird stuff that comes up. And we hired him for modeling. His portfolio is modeling. He has an animation degree, and yet there's all this other stuff that it wasn't on his portfolio. So I guess we're looking for that. We're looking for, beyond what you can share, what is it that you're actually good at? I think that's quite important.
Wow. That's interesting. So I'm a graduate of Animation Mentor, and one of the things they always told me is do not put mediocre work in your demo reel, because you are only as good as your worst shot.
It's true.
Right. So if you're an artist and you have some great stuff, and then you have something that's kind of like, well, I'll just put it there to fill it. Don't put it in there, because you're only as good as your worst piece. Right. Yeah.
I totally agree with you, man. And I think it's probably because if you have a piece that's not great, it's almost like you haven't noticed because it's on your portfolio. And if you haven't noticed, that's a red flag.
You're like, what?
Yeah.
So speaking of that, do you have any tips for people doing animation reels or art portfolios?
You know what? There are so many schools of thought, but for me, I always look for. I guess it depends. There are really great portfolios out there that specialize and they really focus on something. So from an animation perspective, doing realistic characters, or maybe realistic monsters, or stylized characters. One of the things that I've seen a lot of, and this does a little bit irritate me, is when people apply for games jobs, but they haven't got any games related animation in their portfolios, and you just think like, I'd love to hire you, sure, but I can't. There's nothing I have here that I can relate to a project. So just remember that whatever you're trying to be hired for, you need to create something in your portfolio that relates very purposely to that. And I know that's annoying, because like, well, I can't possibly have, every style and every whatever, but you don't need to, especially if you're joining a network like MLC. You can focus on something. You can have one thing you're really good at, and then be known for doing that thing. We've got our lead animator, Rob Monday. He's fantastic animator, but I'd say his real speciality is going to be in stylized based animation. And he can do realism, sure. He's a lead. He can do generalist animation, but when he's doing his portfolio, he needs to focus on his strengths, right? I think it does depend where you are in your career, actually, because he could focus on a few things. But if you're starting out and you want portfolio advice, do something, whatever you are really good at, do that, and do that a few times, and then stick to it. And then later, and while you're doing that, maybe learn some other skills, but focus your portfolio on your best work, like Andy was saying.
All right. That's awesome. So here's a question. We've got quite a few questions in here. I'm going to ask an edgy question here.
Ooh, yes.
We don't normally talk about AI stuff, but let's talk about AI and the future of your business due to that.
From Fading Faith.
Fading Faith on YouTube.
Sure, man. Where are we right now, by the way? We're on YouTube, Discord, and Twitch?
Yeah, YouTube, Discord, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Wow, you guys go hard.
That's right.
That's awesome. Well, hello world. Cool. I just gotta remember the question. Yeah. Okay. So how does AI impact business? There it is. Well, it killed 2D immediately. We went from, I don't know what the numbers are. I would tell you, but I can't remember them. But we went from some tens of thousands of, maybe hundreds of thousands of 2D based work per year to just over like 10, 20,000. We lost a lot of work in 2D, and it's it's not great for MLC, but it's even worse for the artists. There are so many artists in our studio that we've desperately tried to get work for over the past like I'd say 2 years now, and it's just so tough. And I think that AI has a fantastic place to be a tool, and lots of people have said this, and I do agree. It's a great thing to have as a tool to help creatives build cool things in the creative industries. This is not just in games, but when it replaces creativity, I just think, well, it depends what it's for. Like if we took at a completely unemotional standpoint, and it replaces creativity for the to increase the money that company are making, sure, it probably works. But if we want to create original content that has soul and heart in it, which I think is kind of why a lot of people get into films, games, art, books, all these creative media form, then yeah, it just doesn't feel like it can do it on its own right now. And maybe it will in 15 years or whatever. I don't know how fast AI is going to happen, but yeah, I'm not scared about AI, I'd say, at all. I don't know enough about it to be scared of it, I suppose. But we've tried using it in the past. Andy, have you tried using AI? You got any tools that you've used?
I use ChatGPT to help me get ideas for writing stuff.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT.
Mhm.
The 4 model is better than the other one, what they had before, 3.5. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But don't use it to write like all your social posts and not check what it says, right?
No. It's just to get the
Yeah,
it's
because
like it takes out the hard part, the long part, and then you just go through and rewrite stuff the way that
yeah,
you would rewrite it. You're like, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is whatever. I've used it to explore ideas like, I wonder what this would look like, and then I would, do a bunch of AI images to just for
yeah,
me, to see what something would look like.
yeah. I use ChatGPT. What I do is I write my thing, and then I put it in ChatGPT. I say, like, write this better, and it will spit out this thing that's kind of better, kind of not. And then I will merge mine in with whatever it had, and then I have my final. And it's a great tool for that. Like, maybe it comes up with ideas. I'm like, oh, I should have come up with that. That's awesome. Like, that's such a neater way of writing this long-winded sentence, and that's where it's helpful. And then with Midjourney, yeah, absolutely. We explored Midjourney a lot at the beginning. We tried to see if we could use it for creating art direction decks. We tried to see if we could use it to ideate on concepts. I guess in the end, none of that really worked out for us. But where it was useful is when indie founders and developers come to us and they say, I want this thing, and they're able to give us images that represent their idea in some way.
That has
That's
the
awesome.
feeling and the color scheme and the right. Yeah.
It's better than like when normally what you'd used to do is you'd go to Google and get reference images, and people still do, but you go get reference images from Google. But you
Right.
can create and generate references from all the amazing artwork out there, and that's exactly what they are. They are references. They're not concepts, and from that you can draw new ideas.
Right, because really all AI is a database of everything that's ever been on the internet that is put
Yeah,
together in a way that you tell it to.
yeah. It's like
It's it's
ArtStation's
not some
already
magical thing. It's just
no,
all the information.
exactly, and it's like putting it in a blender,
Hmm.
but having some sort of direction to go in, and that's why I think it's I find it difficult to agree with somebody who said that it's not good for referencing, because it literally is ArtStation, but with that blender and that guidance. So you have more fine tuning on it, and actually copying artists less by doing that. Because if you're an ArtStation, you could copy someone's direct concept piece. When you're
Hmm.
using Midjourney, it's got so many things in there that it's not really copying one artist. And I say copying, everyone copies everything, right? It's art. We're inspired by each other. Let's use inspired as a better word. But we can use inspiration from maybe, I don't know how many artists are in one piece, but let's say there are like 5 to 10. That's cool. That's awesome. But
Yeah.
you have to use it for the right reasons, and I think as a tool is always the best way.
Right, I agree. And when I use Chat GPT, it ends up being like the whole process of me doing stuff ends up being probably just as long as it takes me to write it anyways,
Yeah,
because I'm like, here I write all this, and actually I use Windows key H, and I just talk directly into it, and then I tell it all of the stuff,
Wow.
and then I say, okay, now I want you to do this thing, but I want you to ask me 10 questions that I'm going to answer one by one to give you enough information to write what I want you to write.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then it asks me questions and it writes it, and I say, okay, now the thing you just wrote, I want you to give that a letter grade between A and F, and then tell me why it's that grade, and then I want you to rewrite it to make it an A plus. And so the
Right.
process ends up being just as long as if I was to write it out anyways.
And that process works.
And what?
And that works well for you? That process?
Yeah.
I've
And
not
then
tried
I end
that.
up rewriting it anyway. So
Look at you, Indy. You're a prompt engineer.
I'm not a prompt engineer. Oh, that's funny. But it has its place, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Daniel Santos from YouTube. Hey, Max, do you think that there is a huge gap between project managers and developers? From my experience, managers don't know how games are made, so communication between those two areas are quite hard.
Yeah, I know what they're saying. I agree. They can be. I've worked with lots of producers, especially in publishing side as well, because producers in publishing side don't have to necessarily make games. But and this isn't for everyone. I'm generalizing here, but generally, I have found that a lot of producers they can't be good at everything. They're good at being producers. They're good at organizing people, driving up the right talent. There's a lot of producing is really tough. It's a lot of work, but it's not necessarily building a game. So there is a definite disconnect between the two, especially as I find that people who get into production, they do that quite early. They don't necessarily build games and are a programmer and go into being a producer. There are people who do, but generally I find that people go straight into production. So yes, there's a disconnect. And I find the best way to kind of bridge that gap is by having people like supervisors, tech artists, art directors involved in the conversation, because a lot of those guys have a kind of mix between, like a supervisor is a kind of mix between producer, artist, if you like, and they're really useful because they can tell you all the things that's kind of not on brief with the artwork that you've completed, but they also know what's going on with the whole project, and so they can see everything. So they should be involved in the communication and conversation. I can't quite remember the question though. What was it, Andy? Do you want to do the little magic thing?
Huge gap between project managers and developers.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, so I think involving those people really helps. The other thing is to make sure that you're actually sitting down having those conversations. So earlier on, I mentioned MLC Union that we did in Devon in the UK. One of the workshops that we ran was having people who don't normally talk to each other, or people who talk to each other but never really talk about their role, sit down and actually do so. And we found really interesting things came out of that. So we'd have like a 3D modeler and a producer talking to each other and like saying, what are their friction points? Like what's slowing them down? What feedback can they give each other for improvements or what's going well? That communication just solves everything. Communication in any sort of human interaction, no matter what it is always a good idea. So I think if you find that your producers or you find your artists aren't getting something, one the other way, have those conversations about like, where's these friction points? Where can we improve? Because they don't need to know about games producers. They don't need it. It's the job of the developer to know about how to build the game, not the producer. But the producer must trust the developer. That's really important.
Project that I'm working on right now, the product manager, man, that guy, he knows about all kinds of stuff. He's animation in Unity, programming, art. He knows all kinds of stuff. And the producer, he's like in there writing code. He knows the ins and outs of Jira.
Yes.
Oh man, it's awesome. It's awesome to see people just flourish with more skills than what their job title is. It's amazing.
Yeah, everyone should have those kind of like additional little pieces here and there that they at least have knowledge on, right? I like that.
For sure. You got to know a little bit about everything, right?
A little bit. That's why it's good starting your own business.
Yeah. So here we go. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Yao Pedro Monteiro. How can and he's on YouTube. How can a company set the boundaries between having contractors that are not actually just easier, cheaper employees? I don't know where you're from, but here in Brazil, the company can be heavily sued if contractors, well, here's the second part, if contractors have too much of an employee relation with the contractee company.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right, and it does vary country to country for sure. I'm in the UK, so I'm near London. I am familiar that Brazil has some funky stuff going on with that. Mexico is another one. I think the US is pretty tight on that stuff too. I would say most of them are actually, most of the places that I've dealt with anyway. So here in the UK, there are a whole bunch of rules about what sets a contractor apart from an employee. One of them is about exclusivity. So if you have exclusive time, or if you have exclusivity where you say to a contractor, you may not work on other projects while you're working on this, that's kind of a flag for employment. And the way that it works here in the UK is the more flags there are, the more likely they should be classed as an employee. It's not necessarily that they are one thing that they should be an employee. So if I have a contractor who's exclusive, but they can do whatever hours they want, they can work from wherever they want. I only hire them for a year. And a whole bunch of other things, then sure, they can be a contractor, even if they are exclusive. But if I do all of those things, like I say they have to work 9 to 5, they have to use my technology, I'm going to send them a PC, they have paid holiday, all these different employee sort of benefits, if you like, then yeah, the government's going to come in and go, yeah, sure, this is an employee, you need to employ them. And we have thought about that a lot. We've talked to our lawyers about it a lot. It does depend on the size of the studio, I think, as well. If you have hundreds and hundreds of people that you're effectively employing that are contractors, then that's a big worry. But if it's like one person, the unofficial advice is that at least here, governments aren't going to care that much. But be careful.
Yeah, but be careful. In the US, we used to have non-compete clauses, which recently got overruled. And that would be like if you're working for a company that does X, you cannot within X amount of time work for another company that does the same thing.
Yeah.
But those things got overturned. And I mean, if you are an upper executive, those still stick, but they say that those clauses are non-enforceable now. And that's just a thing that's happened just this year.
That's really interesting. I hadn't realized that's in the US.
Yeah.
I hadn't realized that happened in the US. So we still have non-competes here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're more enforceable when you say, like the employee has worked with that customer or whatever in their time at the company. So like if, for example, Indy, you're a producer at MLC and you never worked with this client over here, the non-compete doesn't necessarily carry over for that client. But if you had worked with that client for MLC, then the non-compete comes in. So there's a way to soften a non-compete compete, I guess. But yeah.
How do you feel about non-competes?
I think they are. I hate the prospect of our team going around the back of us and then just, I don't know, working with our clients behind our back, because no matter what, that's a breakdown of trust, and that's not really a non-compete. That's solicitation. That's different. But yeah, I mean, if somebody wants to leave the company and join another one, no matter who it is, if they want to leave, you can't really do much about that, right? But if it's like a client has come in and said, oh, we really like working with Rob. I'm like, great, let's keep working with Rob, our animator. Let's keep working with Rob. And they're like, no, we're going to employ him. I'm like, what? It's our service that we're providing to you.
That's shady, is what that's different. But so the game industry is so small that people find out about that and will get blackballed, I guess, is the word. Yeah.
I think it's good that our industry is small in that respect. Like it's nice to know that the whole "don't be a dick" thing is actually valid.
Right. Right. Like I mean, even so, I was really into animation at times, and there would be people that like, hey, like they would send a reel to a studio, and then somebody from that studio would be like, hey, I know the person that did this shot, and it's not the person that has it in their reel. That is a quick way to get removed from any hiring ever.
Yeah. So I know a studio head, a keyword studio head, who consistently posts on LinkedIn posts from another studio and goes, by the way, we completed all this work, and it's a showreel of another studio, and he's saying that their studio completed the work, and it's really funny. It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. We got another question. It's a short one. I'm gonna look over it like this. Do
Yeah.
you find client acquisition comes greater from word of mouth from previous experiences or cold outreach with the current markets when navigating the year to achieve new service agreements? We'll ask the rest of that in a second.
Sure. I find that there are studios who get founded by founders who have big networks, big relationships already. Those guys, word of mouth, number one thing. But when I started the business, I didn't know a name in the industry. I didn't know anything. And so I couldn't possibly do it on word of mouth. I had to go out cold. And I did that by finding jobs that people were actually hiring for. So I tried to find people who were hiring rather than ask if people were. So it's slightly less cold. I guess you warm up, you qualify the lead, right? You go, okay, well, does this person actually want what I'm selling? If they don't, I'm not interested, and I don't want to hound them for their time. Never go to somebody who doesn't want your services and then just keep going, because that's just annoying, and that's why outsourcing has a bad name. Instead, focus on people who genuinely need your help. A lot of them may not know they need your help, and that's okay. It takes time, but go to all the events. So that's where because word of mouth is super powerful, and you want to start developing your word of mouth as you go, which is why branding is super important and why reputation is awesome. Doing a good job is really important, and then finally getting your name out there at these events and stuff like that is really important as well. So it's a lot of work. It takes years, and be patient. Expect it to take years, otherwise you'll be disappointed.
26 and gray hairs. He's going to start coming in soon. Also, do you feel there's a regional bias to client acquisition, or do you find overseas clients are also still heavily in the market for international teams currently? I.e., do you feel studios should work closer in their regions or worldwide? Is also a great resource.
I don't think. I mean, most of our clients are US, and we have a few folks over there, sure, but we're a UK company, so I don't think it's super regional. It helps. Sometimes it's important. Like there are a whole bunch of clients in Canada. Like there's a client we worked with, a game we worked on years ago called The Last Hero of Nostalgia. It was published by CodeSync, I think. And those guys had to stop working with us because we weren't Canadian. They couldn't spend their media fund, the Canada media fund money, on us.
Right.
They had to spend it locally. And we've had that in Denmark, in Belgium. I think it was Denmark, definitely in Belgium. So sometimes regional makes sense because your money is coming from governments or whatever. Otherwise, people hire based on region because they're looking for a certain price as well. Although that is changing. I used to get people from like Brazil who were like, "Oh, let's do $5 an hour." We're like, "Whoa, that's too low," because we pay a minimum of like I think $25 an hour, no matter where you are. But nowadays, I'm seeing people in like Brazil charging more like $25, $30. Same in India. Some of the places that were typically a little bit cheaper to get this skilled labor, their prices are going up, which is a good thing. So I would say it's regional, but if you can actually see your client face to face, which is why these events are really important, that's really important. If you think about your events as regions as well, like Gamescom, GDC, that sort of thing, if they are face to face time, yeah, you can. I mean, I know Jay because we met at GDC. I'm here today because of that. If I just pinged him on LinkedIn, maybe I wouldn't be here. So face to face time is important.
I agree. Okay, so are you obviously you're looking for clients, right? So did you want to
Funny that.
Funny, isn't it funny? You want to do a little shout out about if someone's looking for your services, what can they do? Also, if someone's looking to be a contractor, are you always looking for that too as well? Yeah,
that is both, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I mean, the thing that we do is, yes, we do outsourcing, but the thing that we really do is we help people make commercially successful games. So be it an indie studio with a one-man band or whatever, or a studio with 100 people, we try and build teams of contractors for you that help you to become more successful. So if you're looking to try and acquire funding with your demo, we're good at helping with that sort of stuff. We help a lot of studios build their demo that then go get funded, which is really cool. And we help them with that funding process as well. If you're an established studio who's looking to scale up, then we can place people directly into your studio so that you can maintain a lot of the service softwares and stuff you've got going on and processes. And we can always act just like a normal outsourcing studio, but they're kind of our thing. And then if you're an artist, the artists we're looking for right now, we're looking for 3D character artists, anyone who does environment design inside of Unity or Unreal, tech artists, both in Unity and Unreal, UI artists, UI and UX designers, actually, and Unity developers, Unity programmers. So anyone who's like in engine doing something, and no matter what you do in engine, be interested to hear from you guys. And you can apply if you go to mlc.studio/join. Yes. No. Yes. Maybe. I think so. It's been a while since I've checked. Yeah, that's right. mlc.studio/join. Nice and easy.
.studio or .studios?
.studio singular.
I did it wrong.
/join. You can apply there, and it will go into our funnel.
I'll just put mlc.studio.
I'll be honest, we're not the best at responding. So get it in there, because then you'll be in our database. You don't need to hear from us for you to be in our database. And then if we can help, if we have work for you, we'll get in touch. There you go.
That's awesome. We also in the Indie Game Business Discord, we have a little industry job section. So Max, if you guys are looking for stuff, if you want to post in there under job opportunities,
okay,
please. We have there's a lot of opportunities in there.
And
there's also job board, people looking for opportunities. So
we shall do that. You'll look out for the MLC name coming through on there, because we'll have a bunch of stuff we can post then. That sounds great.
That's awesome. Well, Max, thank you so much for coming on here. This has been awesome. I'm hosted in Indie Game Business by myself. It's been a long time, so I have the power now. You get money, and you get money, and everybody gets money.
Well, you've been an awesome host, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've been
a great guest. It's been great.
And chat, you have been awesome with your awesome questions. Those were some great questions. If you're not following us on these social media platforms, please follow us. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on where else are we at? We're everywhere. Just indiegamebusiness.com. And if you're not in the Discord, discord.gg/indiegamebusiness. And also, if you go, we have Indie Game Business and Powell Group merch, so you can get a cool hat with this stuff on, some cool hoodies, all that kind of stuff. And we have free courses. And one thing is, we have a newsletter that we send out every week. And when you sign up for the newsletter, you get a list of publishers and you get a list of investors for your indie game. So sign up for that. It's at indiegamebusiness.com. Thanks so much, Max. And we appreciate you.
Nice one, guys. Thank you very much. Cheers.